Hey everyone, so this is a special episode of the World's Fair series, as it is slightly out of order in the timeline. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity with some current events that totally play into this particular World's Fair perfectly. And I've actually been really excited to talk about this one, so I'm glad to have this excuse to pull it out of the timeline early. Kat, of course, probably has no idea what I'm talking about, and that is absolutely fine by me because I enjoy these episodes the most when I can see her utter confusion for a good portion.
I absolutely have no idea what you're talking about. Confirm.
Plus, she will fit right in with the majority of the world who attended this World's Fair and had literally no idea what other piece of history they were also attending.
Oh no.
Yeah. Since the title and description of the episode does give it away for all of you lovely listeners, I can technically taunt Kat longer than I originally intended.
Wow.
Which I think I will do for the statistics part of our usual format of these episodes. Please note that we are recording these episodes out of order as well, so that the upcoming episodes which were previously recorded and therefore will not have the reactions to the stats we talk about here. So, Kat, welcome to Paris. The fifth World Expo to be held here in the general official timeline.
We're back to Paris, all right.
We are in 1900. And this is officially the largest expo to be held in history, including modern-day expos.
Wow, that's impressive.
I'm talking about 543 acres of expo grounds that guests could wander, spanning the banks of the Seine River and 5 main sites that are still major tourist spots today. We'll come back to that later, though. So, the Eiffel Tower has been built by this point. That was built for the 4th Paris World Expo, which we will discuss in an upcoming episode in the timeline, which actually hasn't been recorded yet. But this one takes precedence right now.
Okay.
So this fair was actually kind of put on in a rush, like a major rush. Germany had declared a World's Fair in Berlin, and Paris was, no shock, outraged, and therefore said, we shall do one right now and make it huge!
Oh my gosh, that's kind of like, it feels like high school when someone's like, I'm gonna have a party. Well, I don't like you, so I'm gonna have a party the same night, and everyone's gonna come to my party and not your party.
Well, so Germany had declared one. They hadn't, like, it wasn't that they were already doing it. So basically it was like that they were like, hey, we would like to do one. So Paris was like, great, we're gonna do it first.
Oh, I see. Okay. It's still a little bit catty, but I respect it.
So they rushed to open it on April 14th, 1900, and literally had barely anything finished building. The final look of the fair wouldn't be finished until the end of June.
Oh my god.
None of their buildings were actually, like, great feats like their previous fairs, especially nothing as spectacular as the Eiffel Tower in 1889. In fact, the 43 country pavilions were basically made out of cardboard and plaster and then just decorated beautifully.
Ooh, that's not good.
It did, fool the 50 million visitors, and France ended up gaining a 7 million franc profit out of the approximately 8-month extravagance.
You know what? I mean, if it's gonna be, like, I've been complaining this whole time because they keep making all these buildings and, like, out of glass or, like, whatever, and then only use it once and then tear it down. If they're gonna make a building that they're gonna tear down anyway, I kind of am actually on board with them making it out of cardboard and plaster, because at least it's like, it was never meant to be permanent, you know?
Yeah, I'm like, a kid could basically make it, and that's okay, because it was, like, literally just for 8 months.
It's, like, kind of more sustainable that way.
Just kind of glad they didn't have any big wins.
Yeah.
I mean, they did build, like, some, like, bigger, buildings and stuff that were, like, longer lasting, but, like, it was just that none of them were, like, the spectacular Eiffel Tower kind of a thing, right? Like, they weren't as, like,
show-stopping.
So they did spend, though, just around 120 million francs on, like, the whole thing. But they did make a profit for once.
Yeah, probably because of the cardboard.
Congratulations, France, on actually freaking not being in the hole.
Turning it around.
So as usual, the exhibits were judged, and around 46,000 awards were handed out.
Okay, sick.
France won about 24,000 of them. So your country nepotism was still there.
Feels a little bit biased, but okay.
Not surprising, since 1,422 of the 2,335 judges were French.
Yeah, so a little bit biased.
Just a tiny bit biased.
Just a little bit. Just
a little bit. But you know what? I think we should get into the shoes of a guest of the fair to really see the fair and everything that was happening.
Okay.
So, Kat, it's time for you to do a little time and country traveling.
Oh, God. Okay.
You're now an American young woman, and you're in Paris with your mother to see the World's Fair.
Okay.
You're wandering the exhibitions, looking around at the various objects, and perhaps you've just spent 1 franc for a ride on the Grande Roue du Paris. So it's a giant Ferris wheel based off of the Ferris wheel in Chicago, which, once again, we have not talked about quite yet. Maybe you've marveled at the moving sidewalk, which could go 4.2 kilometers an hour or 8.5 kilometers an hour, depending on which one you dared to try.
Ooh.
But what really catches your eye is the golf tournament off to the side.
Okay.
Now, back home in America, both you and your mother are fairly good golfers.
Okay.
Would you like to try your hand at the golf tournament?
Of course I would.
Perfect. So congratulations. You just won the women's golf event at the Games of the Second Olympiad.
Wait, what? How? What?
But you will never actually know that in your lifetime.
Stop it. Seriously, what?
Your mother joined you in the tournament, being the first and only ever mother-daughter duo to ever compete in the Olympics. Your mother would be in 7th place, tied.
Oh my God.
So you were just in the shoes of Margaret Abbott, who was literally the first ever American woman to win a gold medal. In her case, actually a gilded porcelain bowl, as they actually didn't give out a lot of medals, but mainly like bowls, etc., plates, other accoutrements in place of medals. And the second American woman to ever win an Olympic medal in general.
So, wait, they hosted an Olympic sport at the World Fair, and then what you said she didn't know in her lifetime. So, like, what? Did they just not tell people that that's what they were competing in?
Hang on. Hang on.
I'm so confused.
We're talking about Margaret at the moment, and then I'll get there.
How does it work?
So it wasn't until a university professor was doing research on the history of the Olympics that she found out about the Abbott family achievements and could reach out to the family and share the news about their mother's Olympic win and grandmother's Olympic finish. In order to give Abbott her due, she was born in Calcutta in 1878, making her 22 when she won her Olympic medal, and she was traveling with her mother to study art in Paris. They weren't actually there for the fair, but she actually did see the advert for a golf tournament in the newspaper while she was studying. She had trained at the Chicago Golf Club in Illinois after her family had moved to the USA in 1884.
Checks out. Okay.
When they were in Paris, her mother, Mary, had actually written a book, which was a women's travel guide to Paris.
Cool.
Any articles about Abbott's win in the golf tournament called it a women's cup, never mentioning that it was the second Olympics. After the Olympic win, she stayed in France and won another championship before returning home. In 1902, she married the author Finley Peter Dunne, and they had 4 children together. One of her sons was Philip Dunne, who was actually a major screenwriter for the 20th Century Fox in the golden age of Hollywood, and a major activist during the Blacklist era.
That's actually a really connected family. That's crazy.
Yeah. Margaret Abbott passed away at the age of 76 in 1955. So yes, as you may have guessed, Paris was hosting the second ever modern Olympics during this World Fair. They spread the games out over 5 months of competition, and it was horrifically undermarketed.
That checks out.
So many people had no idea that it was happening, let alone that they were competing in it. A lot of the time, it literally was that people were at the fair and would stumble upon one of the Olympic events to either watch or participate in.
So literally, they were just like, yeah, this is a golf tournament. That's fun. And they had no idea that it was like the World Olympic Games. Or like...
That there was like the Olympic Games, correct.
That's the worst marketing I think I've ever heard of in my life.
Yeah. And then they ran it so that it was literally that they're like, oh, okay, we're doing the World's Fair. Let's also hold the Olympics at the same time. Because then it's kind of like a 2-for-1 deal. But, like, let's not, like, I don't know, tell people?
Why would you not tell your athletes at the very least? That's crazy.
I think some of them knew, but, like, some, like a pile didn't, because you could literally just walk up and be like, oh,
and just
hey,
play.
cool, this is happening. Let's just enter.
That's
so some athletes
wild.
knew, some athletes didn't, and
I mean, can you even really call it the Olympics if you don't have like athletes coming from around the world to compete then? Because you wouldn't be. You would just have like people who are already at the World's Fair, and not all of them are going to be like actually the world's best athletes. Like that's like
it was still considered the Olympics.
I have so many questions.
We were maybe going to answer them.
Probably not.
So this was a huge Olympics though in history, in the history of the Olympics, especially for women.
Right.
So if you know your Olympic history, then you know that they technically started in Greece way, way back in the years 8th century BC to the 4th century AD in Olympia. Those are known as the ancient Olympic Games and were basically naked men showing off their strength, sometimes to the death.
Yeah.
Then, in 1894, Baron Pierre de Coubertin founded the IOC and created the first modern Olympics in Athens that ran in 1896. So yes, it was yet again the damn French who created the whole system that governs and makes the Olympics. So we have the French creating the IOC and the BIE that governs the World's Fairs. They love to have their hands in everything.
Yeah, checks out.
I'm actually finding it quite funny that we're talking about this 1900s Olympics that was held while the French were annoyed that the Germans wanted to hold a World's Fair. And it's currently a German Olympian who is running the IOC while the 2024 Olympics are about to be run in Paris, now.
How the turntables.
But anyways, so the first Olympics was, of course, only men.
Yeah.
However, the Paris Olympics did allow women to participate. While the numbers were certainly not equal, we will get to that. They were at least included, and Paris gets to have that notch on their belt.
Wow, how forward-thinking.
In 1924, for their second time running an Olympics, they also became the first Olympics to include an athletes' village to house the athletes. 2024 is their third time hosting an Olympics, and once again are trying to be the first, as they are making these games as eco-friendly as possible. So they are using as many pre-existing structures as possible and putting up temporary structures where they can that are not going to upset the balance. For example, the gardens of the Palace of Versailles will be the grounds used for all equestrian events.
Okay, cool.
The already built stadiums around the country will be used for football, aka soccer for North Americans. And then they're going to have their surfing held across the globe in Tahiti, which is a French colony, so it counts. And they have their best natural waves.
That makes sense.
The way that France is spreading the games out also basically looks to make it the largest surface area of the games as well.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, but I really like the whole concept behind it of like, let's use the existing infrastructure, and if that means it's spread out, that means it's spread out. Like, I really appreciate that.
You may not with this next one.
Oh, no.
So they're also spending billions of dollars and kind of redoing the sewage system to make the Seine River safe enough for the swimming competitions to happen in the natural waters rather than having to build a new pool complex. The only issue will be if it rains too hard, then the sewage system could overflow and make the waters unsafe again. So you just better hope to hell, if you were one of the swimmers, that the water is A, safe enough in the first place, and B, that it doesn't fucking rain. Because you may be swimming in literal feces and...
That's so disgusting. I can't... I see the intent. I don't know if they gave themselves enough time to really plan out and think through redoing their entire infrastructure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how much faith I have in that aspect of it, but I see the intent.
So what happened with this Olympics is that there's 4 countries up for running for it. 2 of the countries ended up dropping out because of, like, I think the pandemic and things like that. So it was down to France and LA. And the IOC basically said, hey, you two now need to decide, do you want this 2024 Olympics or this other Olympics? And LA basically said, hey, we would kind of prefer this other Olympics. So France was like, okay, we'll take the 2024.
Okay.
Maybe France should have said, let's take the other ones so we have more time to do some of these things. Like, I don't know, changing your entire fucking sewage infrastructure that was built in, like, way fucking long ago.
I hope they're paying so much overtime to every construction worker, to every, like, engineer and designer that's working on this project, because the pressure that they would be under to do it quickly and to do it right the first time would be so much. Like,
I'm like, it's kind of, I mean, it's okay, in a way, I'm like, it's a cool idea that, like, okay, we're swimming in the Seine River. We're going to be doing these events, like, right in front of the Eiffel Tower. We're literally doing dressage in front of the freaking Palace of Versailles.
Right, and if you can sustainably make it clean and then keep it clean, it could become more of a thing, more open to the public to be able to do that as well. However,
I mean, the day-to-day of the Seine River is mainly, like, a boat thing, so it's not really safe to be having people in the water, but... I mean, at least it's safer if you accidentally go overboard.
But you could, like,
and you're not going to die going overboard.
Yeah, it's never a bad idea to make natural waterways safer and cleaner.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's never a bad thing. I'm just not convinced at the whole rebuilding their entire infrastructure on a deadline thing.
Yeah, no. I do not trust this, and I would probably, if I was a swimmer, I'd be like, I will happily waive my right to swim in this, thank you. I don't need that medal.
I don't know if it would be worth it.
I don't think it would be worth it. Most countries, it's not even like you're getting paid or anything.
Oh my god, yeah. I think it's a great long-term goal. I think it was bold to make it a short-term goal.
Yeah. All right. So, but back to the 1900s Olympics during the World's Fair. This Olympics was quite unique in many ways. So, the stats for this one first, though. You had 26 nations competing with 95 events in 19 sports, but 21 divisions, since some sports had, like, men's and women's divisions.
Right, makes sense.
The Olympics opened in May and closed in October, so it ran pretty much the majority of the fair. However, there was no, like, opening closing ceremonies yet. Those hadn't been, like, invented. There were 997 athletes competing, with about 22 of them being women. And that's, like, for your IOC stats. There were some events that were called handicap events, which were not IOC recognized. So there may have been more actual, like, athletes, but they weren't IOC recognized. So I think this is, like, the IOC recognized numbers.
I see, okay.
The first woman to win a medal was Helene de Portals, an American-born sailor who was competing for Switzerland.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Her crew consisted of her husband, his nephew, and they were well known after their win as Olympic medalists.
Cool. Okay.
2 months later, Charlotte Cooper would become the first individual women's gold medal winner, as the English tennis player also had 5 Wimbledon titles under her belt. She was also deaf as she played, becoming deaf at the age of 26. She was about 30 at this time.
Right.
She
Okay.
was one of the few women of the time to serve overhand as well.
Huh.
Most women served underhand because it was easier on their delicate bodies.
Oh no, the delicate bodies.
So some of the events had mixed nations competing against each other, which we never see anymore. As at this point, for the Olympics, you didn't actually have, you were technically competing for a country,
Right.
per se. You were just an athlete there that, or whatever. I think it was in 1908 that is when they really started to actually go, okay, now we're actually competing for a country, and then they retroactively put in who each person was competing for.
Okay. Okay. Huh.
These events included tennis, football, aka soccer, polo,
Right.
the one with horses, not water polo, rowing,
Okay.
and tug of war.
Oh.
Yes, I literally said tug of war.
Tug of war is an Olympic event.
So like forget bringing in like break dancing and bringing back golf. I want to bring back like mixed nations tug of war.
That kind of sounds amazing. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, like even if it's just part of the closing ceremonies for fun, like each nation picks like their MVPs, and then the nation teams get like drawn out of a hat or something, and it's to like who is teamed with who. Like let's just bring in some more fun like nation team building or something to these, and maybe we can solve some like world peace or something through tug of war. Like
Tug of war. World peace through tug of war. That's our next initiative.
I don't know. I think it'd be like a little bit more fun than just like you know how people are like, yeah, like you could like solve world peace through like having a cup of tea, and I'm like, no, let's do it through freaking tug of war.
That's so
I
funny.
think they would feel a little bit more vindicated that way.
If we just solve all our wars through tug of war,
right? Like
that's how we solve disputes like politically from here on out. It's just matches of tug of war.
Like tug of war or like dodgeball or something. Like
dodgeball. Oh my god, can you imagine? Girl, I'd slay.
Like no actual weapons, just freaking dodgeballs, people.
No more guns, only dodgeballs.
I mean, it's safer and a little bit more fun, and at least you can end it with like a good giggle.
Ambitious.
So a couple of fun and surprising, well, interesting stories seem to have happened during these games, which is not surprising since apparently anything and anyone could compete.
I kind of like that. I'm not gonna lie.
So
about it being like open,
right? So the first one is that there is literally a competitor that no one knows who they are to this day.
Oh no! Yeah, okay, that's a downside to it.
And they won a gold medal.
And we just have no idea who it was.
Yeah. So a Dutch rowing team suddenly needed an emergency replacement, and a young French boy was literally just randomly grabbed to help as the coxswain.
Oh my god.
If you don't know rowing, the coxswain basically sits in the boat and verbally yells out cues to the rowers for steering, etc. Their main job is to keep the entire boat safe. And this team is putting their life and the lives of like the other rowers in the hands of a literal random French kid.
Why would they do that? There are so many other roles that they could have put the kid in. They could have had him as a rower and then have one of the rowers who knew what they were doing as the coxswain. And they just, you random child, tell us which direction to go. Don't
somehow worked out. And the kid,
clearly, but like, what?
Yeah. And the kid took the victory photos and then vanished. No name, no age, no nothing was given. Researchers have tried for many years since to track down this mystery kid who helped the Dutch team win an Olympic medal, and all we can tell is that from a modern lens, he looks to be maybe 7 to 12 years old.
Oh my god. They made a 12-year-old captain. And that's
7 to 12-year-old, like somewhere in that possible range. Looking at this kid from a modern lens, like thinking back to like what like a kid from like the 1900s would possibly look like, just this random French kid.
If that kid like,
he could just be like a random street kid.
Yeah, I would bet anything that kid told that story for the rest of his life, and nobody ever believed him.
Probably. Like, hey, I just randomly like helped these rowers and took some pictures, and he might not have even had any idea what he actually did.
Literally, like, why?
Like, he just knows that he just got in a boat and yelled out directions.
Like, that is wild. Poof, gone, never existed.
So many of the USA athletes at the 1900s Olympics / World's Fair had a major gripe with how the schedule was made.
Okay.
Many final events were put on Sundays, and this was a big no-no. Most were encouraged to boycott and refuse to participate because religiously, Sundays are supposed to be a day of rest.
Mm-hmm.
Some did withdraw and some did not. One of these athletes may have taken this a little too far, though.
Oh no.
American track athlete Meyer Prinestein did withdraw from the final because of the Sunday rest issue, but his number one rival did not. The rival beat him by 1 centimeter, and he is alleged to have been so pissed off that Prinestein immediately punched him in the face.
Oh my god.
No wonder the athlete's oath was put into place by the 1920s game to try to ensure good sportsmanship.
So, hang on. You can't run on Sundays because that's a day of rest, but you can punch your fellow athlete in the freaking face.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just fine.
Apparently.
That's not how religion works.
Yeah, you're not resting if you're punching.
You're not resting if you're catching it. No. That's so fucking hypocritical. I hate it. I hate it so much. Yeah.
So the croquet tournament was poorly attended. And when I say poorly, I mean poorly. Athlete-wise, it was all French athletes from Paris competing. Like, literally, everybody like, every single athlete was a Parisian. And only 1 ticket was sold to a British fellow who literally attended the Paris events just for this one event.
So he's like all excited. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna go watch my favorite sport. I'm gonna go watch a bunch of people compete at my favorite sport. And he's the only one in the crowd.
Yeah, so not even the family.
I would never recover.
Like, not even the family for the athletes attended. It was just this lone British croquet fan there to cheer on the French athletes all by himself.
Oh my god. That would be so disappointing. Like, imagine going to a concert and you're like, this is my favorite artist ever. So underrated. Everyone should listen to them. They're so good. And then you get there and it's just you. Like,
so apparently not even like the World's Fair people wanted to stumble upon the croquet. Yeah.
Absolutely devastating. Tragic.
With this event in mind, though, it's no wonder that France won most of the medals, as there were other events like the croquet in which there were French athletes only. Probably because the Olympics were not fucking advertised.
Literally the worst marketing campaign to ever exist because it did not exist.
I mean, maybe it was that France was like, we want to win everything, so we're just not going to advertise it, and will we only be our athletes?
That's so cheap. Oh my god, it's only our athletes watching our other athletes compete against our athletes.
So what we know as gymnastics now and think is demanding with 4 disciplines to be outstanding for the all-around competition is nothing compared to what the gymnasts had to do for these Olympics. In all-round, gymnasts had to literally be amazing in 16 different disciplines.
Okay.
So these included a 50-kilogram stone lift, rope climbing, and then combinations of various disciplines that we see now. So, like, instead of doing one floor routine, you had to do 2. Same with both the horizontal and the parallel bars, the rings, and the pommel horse. For those, you'd have to do, like, a compulsory routine and then a freestyle routine. You'd have the horse vault, which was a compulsory routine, and then your long jump, a pole vault, which I believe was later combined to, like, make the vault that we know today. And then there's, like, another event as well. it would very much like look to me. I'm like it. Like some of these events that like and how like pictures looked, I'm like it looked more like track and field than
The
gymnastics.
gymnastics. That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I've seen videos of like gymnastics from like the 50s or like however long ago, and it seems like the moves that they're doing are way less difficult. So it does put it in context knowing that they had to be better at more of them
Yeah, because
and they had to be like more varied.
I'm like a 50-kilogram stone lift. I'm like, why the heck are you doing weightlifting and gymnastics? That doesn't seem right. But then I'm like, okay, now we have weightlifting as like a whole separate sport.
Yeah,
Like,
that's like a whole different category.
and
Yeah.
stuff, right? And then it seemed like they actually had to do like a high jump, which I'm like,
Yeah.
that's in your track and field.
Track and field,
Like,
yeah. So you've just shuffled things around. Instead of being like, you have to be good at all of these different things, you're like, you have to be really, really good at these 4 things.
yeah. All right. For the horse people out there, which I know there are lots of you from the Stats on our Kentucky Derby episode, this is the first Olympics to include equestrian events. And some of them were plain strange.
Oh no.
You had 5 events in which 3 were recognized by the IOC. Jumping, high jump, and long jump.
On horseback though.
Yes. So 2 of those definitely sound more like they belong in track and field.
But high jump and long jump on a horse isn't that
I do understand high jump in a way because I have seen it done. But the other two events were male coach and then hacks and hunters. Okay, so in jumping, the only one to survive in today's equestrian world, which is your basic show jumping. The Belgian equestrians dominated, which is not surprising if you know the equine world today. But the other events were really something else. So in the long jump, the 17 contestants were asked to clear 4.50 meters, which they did, but then started to struggle when the length was moved to 4.90.
Okay.
The Belgian winner ended up clearing a length of 6.10 meters, while the second place Italian horse was at 5.70. The third place French horse was stuck in the 4.90 range. So I'm guessing, because knowing, like in show jumping and stuff, right, you do have some jumps that are a little bit wider. But what I'm guessing is that, from pictures I've seen, is that they probably had like a water jump, which the water jumps are usually a little bit wider or whatever, right? But I'm guessing that they probably had something that was kind of like a water jump idea, that they just had probably like a small pole or something, and then and stuff, right? But then they widened out like poles, like some sort of poles or something that they had them jump over that were just like a tiny bit off the ground, to basically have the horse still jump, but like had like multiples of them to make sure that the horse was jumping longer.
Okay.
I'm guessing. Because there's no pictures to show me how exactly they were freaking doing that one.
Yeah, because when you said long jump, my first thought was like the pool jumps in show jumping where they have like the little the thing to make the horse jump higher and longer. And I'm like, that was my first thought. And I was like, well, we kind of still have that, but like, yeah, that's a really...
But I'm like, you can't, like, I'm like, how are you going to keep lengthening a water jump? Like...
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that they probably had like little poles that they probably just kept adding or something.
Which makes sense, yeah.
In the high jump, which I'm guessing is kind of almost like a Chase Me Charlie idea in today's terminology, where you just keep raising the height of a jump.
Right. That makes sense.
So in that one, it was a tie between a French horse and an Italian horse who cleared 1.85 meters, with the third place horse clearing 1.70 meters. Which actually isn't that high compared to what I know horses can do, and then they even compared it to what the humans were jumping, which was like in like the 2 close to 3 meters. But they did say that then where they were doing like the horse stuff, that the ground was super hard and that it was not good jumping grounds.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
So that the horses were actually at a disadvantage compared to the humans.
Yeah.
Kind of a
the
thing.
terrain wasn't. Yeah. Because the terrain didn't suit their needs.
Yeah. So, as to the Hacks and Hunters and the male coach events, I couldn't find like a lot of information on them since they're not IOC recognized.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I could find, it looks like Hack and Hunters is a mix between what we know as dressage with the horses being asked to perform specific movements at various gaits, but with 2 jumps added in. Like 2 low jumps being added into it.
Okay.
Which I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
To me. I would love to see what that actually looked like. It looks like both men and women competed in this category, with most of the competitors being French.
Okay.
Male coach driving looks to be a lot like what we see as like chuck wagon driving at rodeos or carriage driving in today's equine world.
Okay, cool.
A team of 4 horses are driven with a large coach behind them through a course, it looks like, as the venue could not hold all 31 drivers. So I don't believe that they're like racing each other around the venue, as it doesn't talk about like holding the event in heats.
Right.
So my guess would be that the judges were looking at like the level of control between the horse teams and the drivers, as well as like the time through like a small course maybe laid out.
Right.
So kind of like the idea that, like, could you deliver the mail safely and in a timely manner without the mail going flying off the back of the coach into the mud?
Yeah, that really does sound like a chuck wagon race.
So, like, this event had, like, a good mix between French and Belgium teams, it looks like, from, like, what people could research and find. Because it wasn't IOC recognized, so they were like, there's not a lot that, like, they had to, like, scrounge to find out any, even, like, who participated in it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So this would not be a World's Fair episode if we didn't talk about Canada's participation, and we did actually participate in the Olympic portion.
Hey, nice.
So we had 4 men participate at this Olympics, while we also participated over in the World's Fair as well. But because we're going to focus on the Olympic portion of this fair, I'm going to focus on one of our Olympic men, who was our only person to bring home our first 2 Olympic medals in the span of 1 hour.
Holy shit. What events?
We'll get there. Because I am in love with this man. And you will see why.
Okay.
All right. So, George Orton was born in January of 1873 in Strathroy, Ontario.
Okay.
At the age of 3, George fell out of a tree and became paralyzed.
Aww.
He developed a blood clot in his brain, and his right arm was severely damaged. He was soon diagnosed with spinal meningitis, which is an infection of the fluid and membranes of the brain and spinal cord. If not treated properly, the patient can die within 24 hours of the infection taking hold.
Oof.
Thankfully, he was, I guess, treated properly.
Because he didn't die.
Because he did not die. But George would not walk again until the age of 10, and not, like, fully regain his mobility until he was 12. But he would never, like, fully recover from his disabilities. But he did continue forwards in his education and training as a middle distance runner.
Okay.
He was able to speak 9 languages and had a BA in Romantic Languages from the University of Toronto, a master's and a doctorate from the University of Pennsylvania by the time he was 23 in 1896.
Well done, kid.
At this time, he was the top middle distance runner in the world, with 17 titles in the USA, 7 in Canada, and 1 in the UK.
Wow, okay.
When he was still at the University of Toronto, he set a record that wouldn't be beaten for 42 years.
Holy shit, dude. That's amazing. That's a lot of big achievements.
Right? So at the 1900s Olympics here in Paris during the World's Fair, George would compete in 3 IOC recognized events, as well as various of the non-IOC events that were known as the handicap events.
Right, okay.
Because of his previous successes, George would have to give up time or distance in those events to make it more fair to the other racers.
They had to grade him on a curve. Holy.
Yeah.
They're like, you're entering, you're too good. We have, like,
That's why they were called handicap events. But in the 3 IOC races that he competed in, he could show his full talents. So he would compete in 2 steeplechase races and the 400-meter hurdles.
Okay.
So he won bronze in the hurdles, as the last jump was a water jump, which is not usual. Then, with an intestinal virus raging through his system, just 45 minutes later, he ran the 2,500-meter steeplechase and won gold.
And he did it sick. Holy.
The following day, he would place 5th in the 4,000-meter steeplechase, still sick with that virus.
Oh my god, dude.
Now, at this point, athletes, because they didn't compete for a specific country, so when that started in 1908, the IOC mistakenly, retroactively put him down as a USA competitor because he was living in the USA. It would take 70 years for the mistake to be noticed and to finally change it to give Canada their first Olympic medals that they earned.
State's coming in and stealing our stuff. What the heck, guys?
So throughout, George hid his dead right arm and hand, but it is now known that George is actually the first disabled athlete to ever win an Olympic medal, as he won his medal before Charlotte, who we mentioned before, which makes this episode doubly relevant, as it's also Disability Pride Month.
That's why you were saying it was so topical. Okay. Yeah, that is...
Well, it's actually doubly topical because we have Disability Pride Month, and
also...
the Paris Olympics starts on July 24th.
Oh my god, yeah, seriously. Forgot about that, actually, speaking of bad... Well, that's not even bad marketing, that's just me not paying attention to sports. No, yeah. That's really crazy, though. Like, yeah, that's wild.
And I'm actually not quite done with the story. Because he's still continued doing some pretty cool things. Because he's also considered to be the father of Philadelphia hockey, as he is the person who introduced hockey to Philly and created the Philadelphia Hockey League after building the first hockey rink for the state. He also became a track coach while traveling between Philadelphia and Toronto to take care of both of their hockey leagues. He would write a manual for track runners that became basically the runner's Bible for the time, and then was inducted into the Canada Sports Hall of Fame as well as the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame. He would also be inducted into the Hall of Fame for the University of Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. And his legacy continues to live on in 2 camps that he created for both boys and girls to be able to get into sports.
Aww. And he's a philanthropist. Oh my goodness. That is a hell of a resume.
Yeah. And he did all of that before he passed away in June of 1958.
Wow. That is a crazy life. That is a crazy life.
And I believe as well, if I remember reading correctly, he also was one of the people who first suggested putting like names or something on like the back of soccer jerseys.
So that you could keep track of which player was which.
I believe so, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, there is a book about him that was written 2017, I believe. That's basically that's called, I think, like Canada's greatest athlete or something to ever live that you don't know about or whatever, because it's like because of the fact that nobody really knew about him because of the fact that he was basically erased from Canadian sports history because they freaking put him down as an American.
Yeah.
Kind of like our friend the painter that was technically Canadian.
Yeah.
And nobody freaking knew about him because he was considered American.
Yeah. That seems to be a little bit of a trend.
Yeah. So, yeah. Guess my new friend George.
George seems like a really, really cool dude.
I like him. So yeah, I think with that, we can leave this fair behind for now and let the legacy of the 1900s Olympics be what carries this one. We'll be back with the timeline on the next episode, going back to 1876, when we finally have a North American fair to look at.
Jumping all the way back.
Yeah, we're gonna go all the way back. I'm thinking we'll probably, when it is the right time for this episode, I will recast this one, so that it's in its correct timeline as well. But yeah, we'll jump back to 1876 for our Philadelphia episode. But in the meantime, please go enjoy the coverage of the 2024 Paris Olympics and seeing the sights of what the 1900s Olympics ran on. And we wish luck to all the athletes, and it is our deepest apologies that you did not get to compete in a tug of war.
Yeah. I mean, how much fun would that be, though? Even as just like a stress relief for all the athletes after doing all this serious competition to just like, all right, now it's time for the tug of war. Whoever wants to compete from whatever, whatever sport gets a chance to just like blow off some steam.
Right?
I think it sounds like a good time.
I think it sounds like a great time. Even just at the closing ceremonies, like, just go and have fun and tug on a dang rope. Forget all of, like, the dances, like, all of, like, the big pompous shit. Just have the athletes play tug of war. We'll watch it.
But yeah, seriously, all the best luck to all the athletes. We wish you all a great competition and safety, above all.
Exactly.
As you compete.
We'll see you guys all, though, on the weird side of history.
Bye!